Howdy y'all, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to dive into the first photographs of Louisville, Kentucky, and I want to give a big thank you to my subscriber, Thomas Meadows, for pointing me in the direction of this history. What I found in my research was absolutely fascinating. Today, these photographs of Louisville will be intertwined with our discussion of the current narrative, which is also a doozy. Not only was Louisville once home to a sprawling indigenous community, but Louisville was also almost completely destroyed by a tornado in the year 1890 that was said to have wiped out a majority of the old world architecture. Also, just years before this great tornado, Louisville was the site to one of the largest exhibitions or World's Fairs in American history. So we'll dive into all of that currently accepted narrative, beginning with the idea that we are told that Louisville was occupied continuously from at least the year 1000 BC by paleo indigenous people who then made way for the mound builders who were in this area until roughly 15 or 1600. Around this time period, we're told most indigenous groups in the area were driven out by the Iroquois, who used Louisville as a fertile hunting ground. However, we're told before they left, the mound builders constructed at least 30 unique earthworks across what is today the Louisville landscape. And that is most likely just a fraction of the number of earthworks that actually once existed here before European contact. Furthermore, we're told these mound builders actually remained in the area of Louisville for much longer than they are recorded as staying in other areas where they left behind these earthworks. It is believed that these cultures, or subsets of these cultures, thrived in Louisville until at least the year 1500, if not later. The narrative on Louisville is an interesting one. It's one of the only descriptions of an area occupied by mound builders or built out by mound builders that actually gives us a lot of details about the sheer magnitude of the size of these earthworks, and yet almost none of them remain today. We're told at one point, dense villages were constructed on top of even larger earthwork mounds. Usually each mound itself would sit atop a series of earthwork plateaus, with most having some sort of heavenly alignment or alignment to the stars. However, this is all mostly theory, as we're told when the first European settlers arrived to Louisville in the mid-1700s, there were no indigenous settlements there at the time, just the residue of cultures who had long abandoned the area. Take that with a grain of salt. But diving deeper into the mystery of Louisville, we have a somewhat heroic but often disproven account of Louisville being discovered by French explorer Robert Cavelier in 1669. It is believed that Robert traveled the Mississippi River Valley but did not make his way the whole way to the Ohio River Valley, meaning Cavelier most likely did not discover Louisville. We've briefly mentioned in other videos Maryland as related to the Virginia colony, the Chesapeake Bay, and my favorite forgotten indigenous people, the Susquehanna. It comes as no surprise then that we are told the first confirmed Europeans to explore the Ohio River Valley were from Maryland. Could these people from Maryland have gained their knowledge of the mound city of Louisville from the Susquehanna, who, in many accounts, were said to have descended from the mound builders? Just more food for thought. Before France could actually make their attempts on Louisville, the landscape, while officially undiscovered, still was given to Britain following the 7 Years' War. After Daniel Boone was said to have forged a trail from North Carolina to Tennessee, he spent the next few years exploring the landscape of Kentucky. 4 years later, in 1773, Thomas Boulet was actually sent by Virginia into what is today Kentucky to first survey that land. By 1774, the first fort in Kentucky was founded, known as Fort Herod. According to the narrative, this little-mentioned fort was quickly ravaged by different indigenous groups, and the Europeans who settled there abandoned the fort. Daniel Boone was said to have returned to the area by by roughly 1775, after he founded the Wilderness Road, and he constructed his own fort, known as Fort Boonesborough. We're told Louisville was then officially founded by American forces during the Revolutionary War under command of Colonel George Rogers Clark in 1778. Clark then actually marched the whole way from a little-known location, Redstone, Pennsylvania, hundreds of miles to Louisville, Kentucky, and his team of 150 soldiers alongside 80 farmers arrived to this region in just over 2 weeks. We're told by May of 1779, the new settlement was named Louisville in honor of King Louis XVI of France, who had aided American forces during the Revolutionary War. But let's talk more about the Revolutionary War. Another rather remarkable line in this narrative, we are told since the Revolutionary War continued to rage as Louisville was founded, every single resident lived inside one of the many forts within the city well into the year 1780. Furthermore, it was Thomas Jefferson who was said to have signed Louisville's town charter as governor of the Virginia General Assembly. Also, during 1780, 300 families were said to have migrated to the area, the town's first fire department was founded, and the first street plan of Louisville was laid out by William Pope. From 1784 through 1792, a series of conventions were held to discuss the separation of Kentucky from Virginia. On June 1st, 1792, Kentucky became the 15th state. The Lewis and Clark Expedition was organized in Louisville. We're told Louisville grew slowly through the beginning of the 19th century as shipping lanes simply did not allow for transportation of large amounts of goods. As New Orleans quickly grew to the trade hub of the South, the first steam vessel made passage from New Orleans to Louisville under command of Henry Miller Shree in 1815. From this point forward, we're told Louisville had an industrial age boom, with the population tripling from 1820 through 1830. This coincided with the founding and expanding of the University of Louisville and the opening of the Louisville and Portland Canal. This canal allowed boats to travel through directly from Pittsburgh to New Orleans for the first time in history. In 1839, the precursor to the Kentucky Derby was held for the first time in Louisville's historic Oakland Racecourse. This occurred 36 years before the first official Kentucky Derby. However, following 1839, Louisville became one of the centers for horse trading, training, and racing in America. By 1850, Louisville was the 10th most populated city in the country, and this is roughly the time the first major railroad arrived to Louisville with the founding of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Company. In 1855, a massive kerfuffle broke out between the Know Nothing Party and the Democratic Party of Louisville in a day that's now known as Bloody Monday. In 1858, America's first printing house for the blind opened its doors in Louisville, and since 1879, this same company has been the official supplier of educational materials for blind students in America. We're told Louisville was one of the largest slave markets in the United States prior to the Civil War, and that labor contributed to most of the earliest construction in the city being constructed by enslaved people, who made up nearly 25% of Louisville's population. However, by the outbreak of the Civil War, Louisville was said to be a major stronghold for Union forces, causing Kentucky to remain firmly in the grip of the Union while claiming to be neutral. By the end of the war, Louisville itself had not been attacked once, although it was surrounded by skirmishes and battles. Reconstruction saw Louisville gain even more importance in trade, and with the running of the first Kentucky Derby in Louisville in 1875, Louisville also became a hub for tourism. Here is where we get to more of the meat and potatoes of this video. In 1883, the first Southern Exposition opened in Louisville, a series of World's Fairs that ran for 5 consecutive years. This occurred in the Central Park area that's now known as Old Louisville, the oldest part of the city. The exposition was held for 100 days each year on 45 acres of land. This was the first major American exhibition to be fully illuminated, as the contract with the Louisville Board of Trade called for 5,000 incandescent lamps supplied directly by Thomas Edison. Downtown Louisville began a modernization period in the 1890s, and that is where we get to the point of the narrative where something major happens. We have the tornado that hit Louisville in 1890, which was said to have destroyed most of the city, which included over 760 buildings and the Louisville City Hall. But what of the Mound City of Louisville? Can we really know what was being torn down, replaced, and showcased throughout the many World's Fairs and even before? What happened to the Mound City? If we can look at the photographs, we may be able to see a peek into this damage. We may be able to get an even better view into the mysterious history of the late 19th century. So please like, share, subscribe to my channel. You can donate and support my work with the link in my YouTube profile. And I can't wait to discuss this deep dive into Louisville with you and talk to you more on the next video.